Welcome back. China's fastest high-speed train service, the Wuhan-Guangzhou Railway, begins operation tomorrow. Final preparations are underway. As Joanne Wong reports, the railway earlier successfully went through its final trial run with passengers along for the ride.
High-speed trains will be officially running on the Wuhan-Guangzhou high-speed railway tomorrow. Staff and train operators have been busy preparing for the launch of the world's fastest passenger rail network. The trains can reach a maximum speed of 350 kilometers per hour within 8 minutes. And aboard, the interior is designed to pamper passengers with wide cushioned seats capable of making 180-degree turns. On Wednesday, 500 passengers got a chance to experience luxury with speed during a test run. The trip took less than 3 hours to go from Changsha South Station to Guangzhou in what was before a 10-hour journey. Despite all the pluses, there were no signs of people queuing up for the Rail Links tickets at the concourse at Guangzhou North Station. Perhaps it's due to the cost, around 490 yuan for the cheapest seat. This worker says he used to pay 68 yuan for cross-city train services. Still, as the Chinese New Year approaches, many have high hopes for the new railway. Joanne Wong, TVB News.
There is an increasing number of cooking schools in Hong Kong nowadays that specialize in cakes and other baked goods. Some of these schools also sell the finished products to the public, but not all of them have the license to do so. Gingerbread men and other seasonal treats. What's better than cooking up a storm to ring in the festive atmosphere? Choosing the right cooking school to learn the skills can be testing.
His wife has told reporters that Liu plans to appeal. Priscilla Ng reports.
Security is tight outside the #1 Intermediate People's Court in Beijing, and a designated press area has been set up outside the courthouse. After being found guilty of inciting subversion of state power, the 53-year-old was sentenced to 11 years in jail. He will also be stripped of his political rights for 2 years. Liu was arrested late last year after around 300 lawyers, writers, scholars and artists launched Charter 08, a manifesto which has since become an online channel for those calling for better human rights and an end to one-party rule on the mainland. In its verdict, the court called Liu a major criminal and condemned him for subverting state governance and the socialist system. His comments on the internet were said to have brought about adverse effects to the country. The court also ruled that his action had exceeded the freedom of speech granted to Chinese citizens. Liu's wife today said her husband is not happy with the verdict and plans to appeal. Meanwhile, diplomats from more than a dozen countries were not allowed in court today. They called for the immediate release of Liu Xiaobo.
Persecution of individuals for the peaceful expression of political views is inconsistent with internationally recognized norms of human rights. Mr. Liu has peacefully worked for the establishment of democratic processes in China.
Earlier this week, the foreign ministry slammed Western countries for voicing their concerns over the case, describing it as a gross intervention of China's internal affairs. Priscilla Ng, TVB News.
Legal experts in the territory say the 11-year prison sentence handed down to Liu Xiaobo was too heavy. Meantime, experts in Beijing said subversion of state power is not always clearly identifiable. They think more needs to be done to help make things clearer. Local scholars pointed out Liu only put pen to paper in co-authoring Charter 08 and did not take any action. They add there were no disputes during his trial. Legislator Priscilla Leung says the heavy sentence might have been triggered by support from many international embassies calling for Liu's release. She explained mainland authorities see the international backing as a boost to Liu's importance. Leung added these types of cases usually translate to a sentence of between 3 to 5 years. Meantime, Beijing scholar Gao Heng said the line between freedom of expression and subversion of state power needs to be more clearly defined.
Here in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Alliance in support of patriotic democratic movements of China staged a protest march to the liaison office of the central government. They called for the release of Liu Xiaobo. At least 4 people were injured in scuffles with authorities after the protesters attempted to charge their way into the building. Kenneth Fong reports.
Protesters from the Hong Kong Alliance in support of patriotic democratic movements of China marched to the liaison office of the central government in the Western District this morning. They held up signs calling for Liu's release and tied yellow ribbons around the main gate of the building. Several of them tried to barge their way into the premises when the gates were opened to let a car out, but the protesters were held back by police and security guards. Three of them collapsed onto the ground, including one police officer. One protester twisted his foot in the confusion. Amid the pushing and shoving, 4 people were taken away by ambulancemen on stretchers. The group blamed staff of the liaison office for stirring up the unrest. They said some protesters were injured when the liaison office staff used scissors to remove yellow ribbons from the main gate. The alliance said they will continue to push the central government for the immediate release of Liu Xiaobo.
They will also hold another protest gathering on New Year's Eve. Kenneth Fung, TVB News.
Foggy weather conditions have caused 4 boat collisions in and around Hong Kong waters. There were no reported fatalities, but 2 people were injured during one of the crashes. The heavy fog has also caused major delays for commuters, with the cancellation of ferry services. Daniel Tran reports.
Foggy weather conditions today have wreaked havoc on Hong Kong's waterways. At 9 o'clock this morning, 8 people were rescued at sea near New Tordao after their fishing boat was hit by a Macau-bound ferry. The collision caused the smaller boat to sink, but everyone on board was pulled to safety. There are about 400 people on the Kotai Gold Ferry, but none of the passengers on board was injured. Heavy fog was reported in the area at the time. In another incident, a fishing boat collided with a sampan off Llama Island, but again, there were no reports of casualties. Another 2 accidents occurred later in the day in waters off Tuen Mun. One of the accidents involved a passenger vessel heading to Nansha in Guangdong province. It crashed into a fishing boat. A man and a young girl were injured in the collision. And in a separate incident, a ferry heading to Chigang on the mainland crashed into a cargo ship. No one was injured. And the foggy conditions have also caused extended delays for ferry commuters. More than 1,000 people have been stranded at the central ferry terminals, and some have accepted that it'll just be a waiting game.
Well, it's a bit chaotic. I'm waiting now 2 hours. No, when I arrived here, there was nothing. Just delay, nothing else.
Shuntak Shipping Company has already agreed to refund passenger tickets, and it didn't fare much better for those who took to the skies. More than 230 flights have been delayed so far today as a result of the fog. Meanwhile, 700 inbound flights have been diverted elsewhere. The observatory says the city is experiencing high levels of fog and pollutants, and they've remained in the air due to the lack of windy conditions. But the winter monsoon is expected over the next few days, which is expected to help reduce pollution levels. Danielle Tran, TVB News.
There was a scare in the Vatican last night when a woman leapt over a barricade and pounced on the Pope as he entered St. Peter's Basilica for Christmas Eve Mass. Pope Benedict XVI fell to the floor but was unhurt and went on to finish the 2-hour service. But a French cardinal broke his thigh bone during the incident and was admitted to hospital. Panic in St. Peter's Basilica when a woman piled into the papal procession at the start of the Christmas Eve Mass.
All of a sudden, this person sort of flew over the barricade, and the Holy Father went down, and all of a sudden, all the security people were all on top of him.
Luckily, the 82-year-old pontiff was not harmed and moments later got up to continue with the ceremony. But an elderly French cardinal, caught up in the commotion, took a nasty fall and was hospitalized with a broken leg. Benedict never mentioned the security scare during the service, but appeared visibly shaken. Vatican officials say the woman was mentally unstable. She'd apparently tried to pull off a similar stunt on the same occasion a year ago. That time, she was blocked down to the ground by security before she got anywhere close. The woman has since been detained by police and taken away for questioning. But the incident left Vatican guards stunned on a night that should have been cause for celebration and has put the spotlight on papal security. And at the birthplace of Jesus, Bethlehem, thousands of pilgrims and dignitaries crowded into the Church of the Nativity for a Christmas Mass. The Patriarch's message was peace. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas attended the midnight Mass in the church built above the spot where Christians believe Christ was born. The top Roman Catholic cleric there, Latin Patriarch Fuad al-Tawal, urged visitors to return home, bearing his call for peace for the Holy Land. Some 40,000 tourists from around the world have flocked to celebrate Christmas in the small town. Many have vowed to keep their spirits up despite tension between Israel and Palestine. Many West Bank locals say development has been hindered by the elaborate security arrangements Israelis put in place to keep Palestinian attackers out.
A territorial dispute between South Korea and Japan has heated up again. This follows the publication of a new teaching manual in Japan asserting Tokyo's claim of sovereignty over a group of islets now under Seoul's control. The new manual was released in Tokyo yesterday as a guide for high school history teachers. It says students should be given a deeper understanding of territorial issues based on Japan's claim to certain geographical regions. Although it does not specifically mention the disputed islets known as Takeshima in Japanese and Dokdo in Korean, it references a junior high school teaching manual that directly names them. South Korea says that's effectively reiterating Japan's sovereignty claim. A South Korean Foreign Ministry spokesman says the Japanese move is regrettable and relations between the two countries could suffer as a result.
Now, after a 5-year-long international custody fight, a 9-year-old boy is finally reunited with his American father. The disputes led to testy exchanges between top American and Brazilian officials and threatened to interrupt billions of dollars of U.S. trade benefits to Brazil. NBC News has more on the story.
Surrounded by a crush of cameras, 9-year-old Sean Goldman clutched his Brazilian stepfather as he arrived at the U.S. consulate in Rio de Janeiro this morning to be reunited with his father, David. At times, Sean, wearing a shirt in Brazil's national colors, appeared distraught inside a private reunion, marking the end of a bitter 5-year international dispute. A thumbs up from David Goldman as he boarded a private flight.
My little boy is 5 feet away, sound asleep, peaceful. We're on our way. My heart is just melting. I love him.
The Goldmans were invited on a jet NBC News charter to fly back to the U.S. Back in Rio, lawyers for Sean's Brazilian family were still angry. This is cruel, he says, and I hope the Brazilian government fights to ensure regular family visits. Goldman told NBC News he will allow Sean's Brazilian grandmother visitation.
It will take time, but I won't deny her or him to know each other.
In 2004, Goldman's wife took Sean to Brazil and never came back. She divorced David, got remarried, got pregnant, and died during childbirth. Her new Brazilian husband, a well-connected lawyer, fought to keep Sean in Rio. But David Goldman fought back with the support of President Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who today expressed her gratitude. We appreciate the assistance and cooperation of the government of Brazil, she wrote, in upholding its obligation under the Hague Convention on International Child Abduction. In fact, the number of those abductions in the U.S. has doubled from 800 to more than 1,600. One reason? The U.S. has no exit controls for adults traveling internationally with children.
What that means is one parent or conceivably even a stranger could leave with your child and no one is checking to make sure that both parents have agreed to international travel for this child.
For Sean Goldman, the next step may be the hardest, adjusting to his new life in New Jersey.
In southwestern Mexico, authorities have ended a brief scare by recapturing 3 tigers, which escaped from a circus truck. The tigers' unexpected freedom came when the vehicle carrying them was involved in an accident, breaking open their cage. 2 of the felines were quickly recaptured, but a third one fled into a mountainous area. A search operation involving police, civil defense workers and employees of the circus eventually caught the tiger. Mexico has seen a spate of dangerous animals escaping in the past year, including an elephant, a lion, buffaloes and camels.
And we have a correction. 7 inbound flights have been diverted so far today due to the foggy conditions. And still ahead, Wuhan-Guangzhou high-speed train service ready to go. Some cooking schools